Get it. Yo, what up, everybody? Salute to those who are here with us at the new state. We're outside in our soon-to-be Pocket Park for a state sessions, jam session today, man. It's beautiful weather here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Kicking things off this afternoon will be a podcast talking about the history of hip-hop. Feed back a little bit, come down a little bit. Talking about the history of hip-hop. If you don't know, this is the 47th year of hip hop, man. 47th year anniversary. So absolutely. So we got a lot of great things going on today. There will be a Black Lives Matter mural being painted. We will have some live performances, open mic today. So if you're in the Milwaukee area, you can definitely pull up. We'll be out here at the new state hanging out this afternoon. But kicking things off, I have a wonderful gentleman sitting with me, hip hop artist, scholar, a fitness guru, all around dope dude. Speak Easy here with me. What's up, Steve?
What's going on, man?
Chilling. For those who don't know, man, my name is Promise, radio personality, media personality on the board of the new state. Just been involved in the hip hop community in Milwaukee for some years. Yeah. And just a lover of the city and lover of everything positive.
Although we are gonna follow like a chronological order, your foray into hip hop doesn't have to be linear.
No, not at all.
Because like I think about myself, I started with all these folks in the '80s, and then like you said, then there was a gap, and I just started listening to everything West Coast.
Right.
So as you come into hip hop, you'll find yourself like, this is what I like, and you think about, you know, everything. What we are doing right now is an homage to the Bronx. We are here in the open setting, and this is hip hop.
Right.
This setting, this is hip hop. We out here amongst the community. Yeah. And talking that good talk, just talking about like, okay, this is our culture.
Absolutely.
And I would love to hear too, as the conversation progresses, our culture and owning our culture.
That's an interesting point as well.
Like, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it damn near was in my blood to be involved in hip hop. My other half of my family's from the Bronx.
Nice.
So I feel I didn't have a choice. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, my mother's side is Milwaukee, my father's side is the Bronx. So I almost didn't have a choice. Like, I had to be hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no choice.
My family comes from that. You know what I'm saying? So like, my father, you know, for him, he's seen some of it in its infancy. You know what I'm saying? Him being a guy in New York growing up, you know, in the 70s and 80s, like, he saw it in its infancy, probably not even really knowing what it was. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure he saw park jams. I'm pretty sure he saw guys breaking, doing graffiti and different things like that. Yeah. But my pops was a boxer, and he was a street kid. So he wasn't focused on that element, you know. And then he obviously moved to Milwaukee, met my mom, and then thankful that I'm here. But
word up.
But like I said, but just learning my family's origin and learning about the Bronx and him telling me about elements, that had me excited to know, like, yo, my pop is from the birthplace of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? So then I started to learn about the KRS-Ones and Boogie Down Productions and, you know, different things that came out of the Bronx and like almost what sparked it. And like I said, I just, even though, like, again, I'm not from that era, that's not my time period, but you can still be involved or learn about different eras and different vibes, even if it's not, you know, your type of thing. Like, and I said, with technology, it's just beautiful. You can really go on YouTube and, like, I remember the first time my pop told me about, like, Rapper's Delight. Like, I didn't even hear the original. You know which version I heard? Remember when Red, Meth, and Eric Sermon, remember Def Squad did the cover of it? Yeah. So the first time I ever heard Rapper's Delight was the cover version.
Oh, wow.
And then there was Rap, the compilation. Wow. Where they had current artists at that time do covers of
the old school.
Yeah. So my first time hearing Rapper's Delight wasn't even the original.
Jeez.
I heard Def Squad's version.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Shout out to Def Squad.
Yeah, so I'm like, yo, this is dope. My pop is like, yo, that's an old record from back in the day, you know what I'm saying? And like, so it was just interesting, like, to hear that. And again, it wasn't my era, but for me to be like, oh, okay, that's a song from back in the day. Okay, you know what I mean? And like hearing about Curtis Blow and how he was the first MC to get a record deal. And so, like I said, even though certain stuff was not in my era, I just have a love for the appreciation for the culture to where I'm like, yo, let me go find out about these other people and how pivotal and how important they are, you know, to our culture.
Yeah, and like, it's funny you bring up KRS-One. KRS-One is probably one of my first favorite MCs.
The teacher.
And like, in addition to that, like, just one of the people who, like, lyrically, was beginning to set himself apart from other people.
Yeah.
And like I've been such a big fan of KRS-One, man. I remember I was living in Atlanta, and I'm going to the store. I'm going to like the store to pick up some stuff. It's like a Walmart or something.
Okay.
And I'm looking at electronics. I'm like, bro, that's KRS-One. And
whoa, wait a minute. KRS-One was in the store?
In Walmart, bro, in Atlanta. And I'm just like, that's
random.
KRS-One.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not gonna be that dude. I'm not gonna run up and like. I was like, you know what?
The teacher.
That's the teacher.
Yeah.
But I can't fanboy out in the middle of Walmart with like tissue and household items.
But that's fire though. Like
I'm like, yo, that's KRS-One, dude.
Yeah.
Like he was just right there, just chilling in Walmart. You can tell some people recognize him, but then
Right.
like, you know, anybody 20 or under, they're like, who is this dude that people are crowding around? Like, who's
Right.
this dude? Like, what's so important about this dude?
Right.
And I'm like, you have that's KRS-One,
yeah,
bro.
I mean,
like
when you think about hip hop, he definitely is one of the most important guys, especially from that era. Like
the first diss song I heard was "The Bridge Is Over."
Yeah.
That's the first diss song. I was like, wait. So not only can you dance, you can actually like rap against somebody.
Well, remember too, it's funny you say that though. Let's talk about that. That's like, so everybody has different terminology for it, but cracking, ribbing, jonesing, you know what I'm saying, ragging, all of those, that was like kind of almost the essence of rap too, right?
It's in Rapper's Delight.
Correct, right, absolutely. Yeah. So the beginning of rapping, you know, we gotta take it back. So rapping kind of comes from, first of all, James Brown. Yeah. James Brown and like scat, right?
Yes.
So James Brown and scatting are kind of like precursors to rap, right?
Yes.
And then even like, for anybody out there who has Netflix, you get a chance, watch Eddie Murphy's movie about Dolomite, okay? You get a chance. That movie kind of gives you, because if you think about blaxploitation films, right? I know we're all over the place, but it'll tie together. If you think about in the 70s, blaxploitation almost was a precursor to hip hop as well. Yeah. So if you think about the Mac, Superfly, Dolomite, a lot of those elements are sampled.
Those were MCs, bro.
Yes. So those guys were talking the pimp stuff, talking all the jive talk, slick talking. Yeah. Like that was precursors for hip hop. And if you notice, a lot of hip hop has sampled these movies or these, you know, the I Choose You sample, which was made famous by Outkast and UGK for I Choose, you know what I mean? Like that has been sampled so heavy. Willie Hutch has been sampled so much, and Isaac Hayes and
oh my goodness,
you know, what's my man Curtis Mayfield, you know, all of those, all of that music is like precursors for hip hop. Like I said, soul, funk. We don't have hip hop without those elements.
And I love that you told the story about your dad, like made you listen to the original version of Rapper's Delight, because like, I'm that dad. Back when Juice WRLD's joint came out, and like when he had that song where he sampled
the Sting sample.
Yeah,
but I knew it from Nas.
The message.
Written.
So like literally, I was that dad. So I made my kids. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this one. Now y'all gonna hear Nas, and now you're gonna hear the original guy that they got it from.
Fact.
Like I was that dad. I'm like, no, we're not leaving. And I'm driving. I'm like, I'm controlling the aux and I'm driving. Like, no, y'all gonna learn about hip hop today.
Well, it's funny. You know what one of my favorite websites is? Who Sampled.
Oh yeah. Okay. Especially as a producer.
So I see some head nodders. Now for me, like I remember just always loving like production, right? So when something is dope to me, I remember like, you know, like for us, as kids, our music is really our parents' music, but I didn't understand that. Yeah. So I remember like I used to be vibing out to songs, right? So let's just say like More Money, More Problems from Biggie. Yes. Very popular record, right? It's Diana Ross's I'm Coming Out. Yep. But I have no idea, right? So I'm vibing it, you know, now, you know what I'm saying? I'm vibing to it.
You look at your parents like, y'all don't know nothing about this.
And my mom is like, that ain't no damn Biggie. That's Diana Ross. And I'm like, nah, this Biggie. Or when I heard Big Papa, we vibing to Big Papa. She like, that's the Ozzy Brothers. That ain't no. And I'm like, this ain't the Ozzy Brothers, it's Biggie.
Yeah, man. And you know, the funny thing is, speaking of who sampled it, right? My first real job, I worked at Walgreens, bro. So like, I'm stocking shelves, and I'm like, wait, Dilla sampled that. Wait, that's a Tribe Called Quest. Wait, that's the Ghetto Boys. Yeah. And I'm like, so after that, then like I'm starting to learn how to play with the beats. I'm like, so I just listen to songs at Walgreens. I'm like, I'm gonna find this song and I'm gonna sample it and I'm gonna flip it. I'm like, if Dilla and them are doing it, wow, I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm like, man, like so.
But that's what almost grows your appreciation just for music in general, right? Because I know we're talking about hip hop, and I love hip hop to the core. But like, I'm a fan of so many other different genres, so many different other artists. Yes. And a lot of it is tied, you know, because just loving like music, I'm always curious, especially like I said, when I started reading The Source and XXL, then I started reading the credits.
Yeah.
You know, I used to want to look and see, you know, back when CDs still was popping, I would be the kid looking through the book and seeing, you know, who produced what and who sampled what.
Yeah.
So then, you know, I'm like, well, let me go online and pull up the original record. So whoever thought of the who sampled website and app, I was like,
That's
thank you,
genius.
because
That's
now I don't got to
genius.
sit here and individually look on my own.
Yeah.
But like I said, just being a lover of the culture, that's what, you know, made me just dive into it. And it's funny, going back to your KRS-One story. So my introduction to KRS-One actually came in the Bronx.
Wow.
Now, I didn't meet him, but the first time I ever heard KRS-One, I was a kid. And we, like I said, my father's side of my family is from the Bronx. My mother's side is from Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to drive back to New York to bury my grandmother.
Word.
And I remember being in the car, and I kept hearing the "Step Into Our World" record.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but obviously that samples Blondie's
Yes.
Rapture,
Yep.
which also some people would consider an early hip hop record.
Yep.
But I didn't know what it was, and I just kept hearing and I didn't know
Yeah.
what that was, but that was my first introduction to KRS-One.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I didn't know that this dude is from the Bronx. I didn't know I'm in his borough.
Oh.
But like as a kid, like I heard that record.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to KRS-One.
Dude, and you know the funny thing is, like, the Bronx to Milwaukee connection, the first hip-hop show I ever went to was Afrofest, and KRS-One was headlining.
Oh shit. That's coming full circle.
It was like KRS-One. Remember Mad Lion? Like he
Yes, yeah.
he had
Take It Easy.
Yeah,
Gotta
man.
take it easy.
Yeah, dude. So like I saw KRS-One live, and I was like, and he's one of those MCs when we get, you know, we talk about freestyling. Like now freestyling is legitimately accepted as a written rap that nobody's heard before.
Spitting that written.
But back in the day,
off the top.
off the top. So if you freestyle, none of that was pre-written, none of that was choreographed.
Right.
Like that was, and then like hearing him, he was one of the first MCs I saw live, like to start rapping and then points out something in the crowd, and like
Yeah.
you know, folks be cracking on Common, like, but that's because we heard KRS-One.
Dude, Common still breaks dance,
Go off the
freestyle
top.
at it. If you go to a Common show, he still will break dance.
Yeah.
And you gotta think, this dude make crazy money doing acting roles now. But
Yeah.
Common will still break dance. He will still freestyle. Common
Yeah.
will do a lot of things at his shows.
I wonder if he got a clause in his acting contract.
They're
If
like,
you break
dude,
your leg.
they like, we about to shoot a new act.
I'm still filming this movie.
Like, you gonna be in John Wick 5. Sit your ass down for a second. Like, but yeah, like, you know, certain people who just love, you know, and even bringing up to newer artists like a Corday.
Yeah.
Like, I think Corday is dope because he's one of those guys who, kind of like we're talking about, he doesn't use his age as an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, he stands firm in speaking for the younger generation and going against sometimes, quote unquote, the old heads. But at
Yeah.
the same time, he also embraces the culture and is an MC. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you know what? I think we're finally getting to the point where consumers and people in the hip hop culture are starting to understand that this divide between the younger artists and the older artists is nothing but the powers that be marketing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
pretty much artists get used up, and until they can't get used up, then okay, we're gonna embrace this. That's where this divide came from. I mean, literally, Nas just came out yesterday.
Don't even make me talk about that.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
Nas-
my favorite MC.
Nas
so.
just came out yesterday.
King's disease.
And Nas is if he's not, he's knocking on the door of 50, and he's still spitting.
Actually,
And-
Nas is 40. He was born in the 73, the year of hip hop. So Nas
Word.
is 47.
So,
right
you know what
now.
I'm saying?
He's
So-
43 or 40.
And then you
46,
have another any young artist who just like can just flat out just spit. I mean,
Yeah.
like I go from like listening to Nas, and then there's a young MC. I think she's young. Her name is Lady London.
Okay.
And I think she's one of the best MCs out.
Yeah.
And I've only heard her in a few songs. I'm like, and she's New York based MC.
Yeah.
And taking it back to that New York sound. And it's like, that's the beauty of hip hop. It's something for everybody.
Well, the dope thing too is like I said, growing up in the Midwest, man, I grew up listening to everybody. Like sometimes if you're from the South or you from the East or the West, like they may have a cultural bias at times. But growing up in the center of the country,
Yes.
I tell people whenever I meet other artists and different people, I always tell them you need to thank the Midwest for keeping the culture alive, because a lot of artists were able to
great
come
point.
here to tour. Right?
Yes.
If you were an East Coast artist and you couldn't get no play on the West Coast, well, you could land in the middle, right?
Yeah.
If you were a Southern artist, you couldn't get played in the West and the South and the East,
Yeah.
you could land in the Midwest. So Chicago, Milwaukee, Ohio, Michigan,
Indiana,
we keep hip hop alive because we listen to everybody. We're least biased.
Yeah.
So we allow different things to penetrate our earwaves. So
I would even add to that and say Midwest consumers of hip hop have the best ear.
Yeah, because again,
we listen to it all. We did, like, I remember listening to, like we said, BDP, Ghetto Boys, NWA.
Right.
Like, I mean, all in the same day. Like, you listen to everything.
Yeah, and my thing is, I've never felt guilty or strange or weird about my choices. Like, I vibe to the Roots.
Yes.
I vibe to Jeezy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I vibe to Big Crit. I vibe to Freddie Gibbs, you know what I'm saying? All the way to listening to, you know what I'm saying, artists from right here in Milwaukee, you know what I'm saying?
So, like, let me ask you this. How old were you when you realized that the producer on a hip-hop track was not necessarily the beat maker?
It had to be, like, probably like my early teens.
Okay.
Because I remember, like how important, like, Puff was.
Yeah.
To, like, hip hop and R&B, especially in the 90s, the mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, and like realizing how he and Dr. Dre are architects and not necessarily always physically, like you said, making the beats. Like, I didn't necessarily understand that element at first. I'm just like, oh yeah, so-and-so produced this, not realizing that producing isn't always physically making the beat, but it could be orchestrated. It could be me telling
like
you, take that loop.
Yes. And that right there, I was probably like late teens, early 20s when I realized that, but it made my appreciation for Quincy Jones even deepen, because I'm like, okay, Quincy. When you think about all the different things that Quincy Jones has done, and I like producers, that's why I like to bring that up, because like, arrangers. So when you think about somebody like Jermaine Dupri, who
underrated, JD doesn't get enough credit.
I listened to him on a podcast, and I can't give the exact podcast credit, but he basically said, I'm not competing with hip-hop producers. I'm trying to I'm inspired by Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to last all of these decades.
Yeah, and I always feel like
putting out fire.
Dre is the closest to the hip-hop Quincy Jones.
I think, I used to believe so, but I don't think so anymore. Because
really?
I think, and this is what I say, because one thing that I hear about Dre that I never hear about Jermaine Dupri is it all that's not your stuff.
The peoples that he got working
that's
with
not
him.
your beats. That's not. So for me, I'm like, that tarnish. No taking away from what Dre has done for hip hop.
Right.
But Jermaine Dupri does not have that stain on his resume.
Okay.
Like, Jermaine Dupri don't sign a bunch of producers, and years later when deals go sour, the Chronic, when Daz said Chronic, that's mostly me. I'm like, I didn't even know Daz was around.
Yeah, Daz.
Or was it Chronic 2001? But like, but then there was Hitman and Mailman that were actually also
Hitman,
on
Scott Storch, Mike Elizondo.
So you know what I'm saying, and then also another thing, when Jermaine Dupri has a talented elite artist, that artist actually has an album that comes out.
True.
Like, Rakim was signed to Aftermath. We never got that album.
No, we never. But you know what though? If you think about that issue though, that's
we're gonna talk about it. Let's talk about it.
But we can talk. But that's a Dre and Rakim issue, because Rakim is very stubborn and set in his ways, right? And Rakim was an original pioneer and pillar, and he was coming out in a different era.
Yeah.
And he was aligning himself with Dre and Aftermath, and Dre is a known perfectionist to a fault. And I think the expectations were so high after they did the Truth Hurts record with Quik, and I just don't think it ever materialized. Because they did work, and even remember, Busta Rhymes even went over there and dropped the album.
Yeah.
So I think it is possible. I just think that sometimes with Dre's work ethic and sometimes another artist, it becomes it stales out and it doesn't move. But in Dre's defense, I know he can be a stickler and it'd be like we be waiting forever for Detox. But in his defense, his imprint, and like you alluded to earlier, the NWA family tree is arguably the greatest tree in hip hop.
It's not even arguably, it just is.
You know what I'm saying? So Dr. Dre, his hand has been involved in everything from Ruthless to Death Row to TDE with Kendrick.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And don't forget 50 and G-Unit. So Dr. Dre has been involved in so many different facets to where even if he's not behind the boards, his ear and his eye. Yeah. And I'll tell you another funny tidbit about Dre that people don't know. Even when he's not producing, Dr. Dre mixes and engineers a lot. Did you know that Dre mixed and engineers Jay's entire Kingdom Come album?
No, I didn't know that one.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, people don't like, Dre does more than you think. Jay-Z had Dr. Dre mix and engineer the entire album.
Yeah.
Dre only has, I think, 2 production credits on there for making beats.
Yeah.
But he mixed and mastered the entire album for Jay.
Yeah, I mean Dre, he's a monster. But I just want to highlight for me, because like we're in this era where versus is happening and everybody's like, well, Dr. Dre versus. I'm like, well, if Jermaine Dupri goes against anybody, it's got to be Dr. Dre, because
people wanted Dre versus before the late great Andre Harrell passed. People wanted Puff versus Dre. That's what they were trying to do for him. Whole Death Row.
Puff is a great exec.
What we talking about?
Yeah,
Puff doesn't have the greatest production credits, but he's a great organizer and facilitator.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
He's one of the great hip hop execs, but when it comes to producers, nah.
No, Dre would smoke him from a production standpoint. Yeah. But just as far as but Puff's hand in different facets as well. You know what I'm saying?
Uptown. Biggie was on.
Oh man.
I mean, you had Biggie. Biggie was signed to Bad Boys.
That's cheat code.
That's a cheat code.
That's a cheat code. I mean, if you play.
But here's another thing too. A lot of people don't realize sometimes amazing producers and stuff have an L, but then they come back greater.
Yeah.
So when I think about Kendrick, and I like Kendrick as an MC.
I love Kendrick.
What happened, a lot of people maybe will not draw this parallel, but Razzcast was Kendrick before Kendrick. And if you think about Dre's first time to pair an elite West Coast MC,
he had Razzcast back in the day.
But it never
materialized.
I think about when you think about Razzcast just being one of the illest MCs, he's part of the Four Horsemen and all that other stuff,
Google some of y'all might have to Google these people.
Razzcast. Razzcast is he's one of the dopest.
He was a very technical.
He
was a very technical West Coast rapper back in the day,
and he was
respected by East Coast.
He was ahead of his time. And then you think about K-Dot, how he came into the game, because Dre was able to take the lessons learned with Razzcast, they're not ready for this, so I gotta spoon feed people. And then K-Dot just blew up in front of everybody's face, but it was trial and error. But it's you get to draw upon those experiences.
True.
As with having other acts that did. I mean, Joel Ortiz was on Aftermath. I mean, he was. You think about all of these MCs, he's one of the illest MCs ever. I just feel Dre is he's one of those. He's got one of the greatest ears. He's one of the better producers. But before we get off production, I can't leave this conversation without highlighting DJ Quik.
Oh man, listen, Quik. Listen, Safe and Sound, okay, is one of the albums that changed my life.
Yeah.
Right? As a kid, I remember hearing my uncle play that album. That's a summertime album.
If it don't make dollars, it don't
make
sense.
When he did MCA. So
that's a very underrated diss song.
Quik is underrated as a producer in general.
Yes.
And then just as an artist, he has one of the silkiest flow. I got the pleasure to meet Quik a couple years ago.
Nice.
Man, and it was for certain people in different eras and generations, they might have not understood why that was so dope to me.
Yeah.
But when I got to meet Quik, I was just geeked, and I was just talking to him, and it was fun. We had a moment where we were rapping some of his songs together.
Yeah.
And he's just like, man, you too young, man. How you know? He's looking at me. He's like, dude, you 12, man. How you know these records? And I said, listen, bro. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't necessarily my era. I'm like, but growing up around my uncles, my cousins, different people, they exposed me to this music. I said, I probably was too young to be listening to some of it, but I said they would separate art from fiction for me, art from life. But I said, man, I just gravitated towards your sound. And like I said, that Safe and Sound album to me is a underrated classic. You know what I mean? So it's funny you brought up Quik, because Quik is definitely one of the illest producers, and he's highly underrated, man.
He is. And another thing too, so I always have this, I believe that the world of fashion is that's we haven't talked about. That's a part of hip hop too. Yeah, it's phenomenal, right? Because you think about these designers, and they put a lot of work and effort into their craft, and then they hit a certain level, and now they've taken out. But when you think about hip hop and fashion, I feel like hip hop has been responsible for a lot of leading fashion trends and all of these different things, dating back to the origin of hip hop.
Listen, hip hop is responsible for making clothing brands household names.
Yeah.
And for better or worse.
Yep.
Because if you think about the origin of hip hop before it spread and became global and reached other cultures, hip hop obviously started in the ghetto, right? It started in the black community in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And black people for years have been what I call at times walking billboards,
yes.
right?
Yep.
We whatever we wear how we wear our hair, how we dress, how we speak, whatever we promote as far as our beverages of choice, different our sneakers or whatever. Like we have been walking billboards, and like you said before, without having sometimes ownership or a say so. Yeah. At one point, we were promoting other people's brands all the time. So if you think of
the time.
So like now, like designer brands are designer brands, but like back in the day, a guy by the name of Dapper Dan, right, making a custom Gucci. And guys wearing Louis Vuitton and Chanel and Pony and Adidas and Nike and velour sweatsuits and gold chains and ropes and Kangos and like all of that stuff, right? Like this was just kids in the neighborhoods dressing how they wanted to dress, and then the artists were reflecting the communities, and then they were being themselves, and then obviously people see it and then they latch onto it and they became, and we're gonna talk about the commercialization soon too. But it's like hip-hop as a culture, the fashion is important and a part of it as well, but sometimes we've been walking billboards, right? Like we advertise other things
for free
and all the time and make it popular, and then we don't have anything to show for at times. But fashion is very important to hip-hop. Like that's definitely one of the pivotal things for hip-hop.
When you talk about, when we talked about funk earlier, and when we thought about Parliament and those artists.
Oh man, George Clinton is definitely a forefather of hip-hop.
P-Funk, they dressed a certain way, they looked a certain way. So hip-hop was the first time I saw somebody famous on TV that could rock something that I could actually go buy.
Well, but the funny thing is though, but the fashion evolved in hip hop, because we also have to talk about not only funk and soul, but we also have to talk about punk rock. And the reason I'll say, for people who don't understand the correlation between punk rock and hip hop, like punk rock in the 80s in New York was like kind of like the rebel underground, I'm going against my parents type
vibe.
Simultaneously. Right? Yeah. So like rock and roll, the original rock and roll was like your parents rock, and then rock and roll went through a phase where it became rebellious and it was like anti-establishment. Well, hip hop was like rock and roll's cousin almost, right? Because it's like you guys are talking about that stuff maybe in the suburbs, and we're gonna do it from the urban communities, and
that's why the Beastie Boys were so important to me.
Right. But if you think about it, if you go back and watch the Message video, right? Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, another very important record for hip hop. Go back and look at what they wearing though. Like they weren't wearing the Kangos and the baggy clothes yet. At that time, it was jean jackets, it was leather, it was chains,
chokers with the like
the
spikes and stuff.
It was a lot of punk rock infusion, and like you said, even if you look at being influenced by Parliament Funkadelic in those eras, like when the 70s merged into the 80s. Hip hop didn't per se have a voice, a sound, or a style yet, so it was pulling from everywhere. So rappers didn't quote unquote look like rappers back then, right?
No, and that's why like it was Dre had a lot of material to use against him when he was beefing,
because in Cali it was a lot of the androgynic era,
man, like, and he was around like even before hip hop, so like
what else? World Class Record Crew.
So and when you think about that, right? So you talk about not owning it, and then you have someone like Rihanna who's like a fashion icon now, and like her influence and what she's done with her brand, is, I think that's hip hop all day, every day. Like, and then how she managed to do it. Like, she didn't make a lot of noise about what she did. She just does it.
Right.
Like she just straight bosses up and does it. So I love the fact that like fashion and hip hop go hand in hand. And you think about some of the greatest artists, even today, when award shows come back, everybody's like, well, what are you wearing? Oh, that's blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that's the origin of hip-hop. You go back to Eric B. and Rakim talking about the cover of Paid in Full.
The cover of Paid in Full, a very iconic album.
You know what I'm saying? How they had Dapper Dan create that, you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Create the original vibe, and then after that, we all wanted it.
Well, and it went from us being billboards for other brands to us helping expose brands, right? Because then you start having black designers. So you had your Karl Kani's back in the day. You had your Cross Colors, right? You had FUBU. So these brands started in the early 90s, and then they had hip-hop artists wearing their brands, helping brand that, which led into Fat Farms, the Sean Johns, the Rockawares, the Wu Wear, Masterpiece clothing. You know what I mean? Like, so then that brands into like what you see today now. Like, it's very common for rap artists. Look at what Nipsey was doing with the Crenshaw clothing line and the Marathon stuff, right? So it came from at one point being, appreciate you, man. He seeing me with my throwback J's on. But you know what? That's a whole nother conversation within hip-hop.
But the thing is, it's still appropriate because you have MCs that talk about
Well, self-destruction is one of the most important records in hip
And
hop.
that was one of the first records where it's like, okay, we need to do our own We Are the World.
Right.
And the thing is, so like, and also what happens is you don't necessarily, you see the commercialization of things that are happening that are wrong, but you don't see the commercialization of the people that are doing right.
Right.
And a lot of times there are people like you and myself that we do a lot of things that we do off the camera.
Correct.
Off the mic. If I talk about what I do professionally, I've been working in the community since, for over a decade that I work with children and families. So I'm in these neighborhoods and I'm doing what I need to do, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there's work to do.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that, and that's the beauty of hip hop, because it's still from self-destruction to Kendrick the Black or the Berry. We need to promote that positivity, and once that mindset shifts, that's when we start to really capitalize on and everything we're talking about as far as owning our culture, owning our fashion, owning all these different things, and you just bring back that sense of pride.
It does, and if you really think about it, to be black in America is a unique experience like none other. So, Demon, we getting some feedback, brother.
My bad.
But being black in America is an experience unique, it's like none other.
Yeah.
And even though we're talking about hip hop,
yeah,
black in America is a part of hip hop, right?
It is hip hop.
Part of the story of hip hop comes from being black in America. You started writing records, you started speaking about your experiences of what you saw and what you experienced in your life and in your neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
Before it expanded and went into other areas. So part of the struggle being black in America is you fighting two fights. Let's just be real.
Yes.
When you born black in this country, you are going to have odds and things stacked up against you from day one.
Yeah.
The day you come out of your mother's womb, you are going to have stigmas and obstacles placed in front of you, unfortunately and unfairly, just because of the color of your skin, the texture of your hair, or even your name.
Yeah.
That's just going to come with it, unfortunately, in this country. But then beyond that, you also have a dynamic where you're going to fight and deal with struggles within your own community from within the own community.
Yeah.
So you already have an oppressor, or you already have things that have been put in place for you to spell.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you find a way to maneuver around that, you also have the lack of knowledge, the lack of self-awareness within sometimes your own community. Instead of people aligning themselves to learn, to grow, and to share,
yes,
there's sometimes a distaste and a disdain for, well, I want what you have, right?
I agree. And let's be honest, too, even before we get too far, because we have another gentleman who's going to speak with us, statistically, if you look at the data, there is no more significant black-on-black crime than it is any race on any race.
Right, when you have any group of people living amongst each other.
Hardcore physical data, that's more mythical than actual. Is there a crime that happens? Absolutely. But does it happen in disproportionate rates? No. The incarceration of African American people happens disproportionately.
Correct.
Black people being killed unjustly happens disproportionately, but the crime against one another happens at much more less of a rate than it's actually being advertised, and even that within itself is propaganda. But we have a guess.
But like I said, to piggyback on that, those may be factors, because obviously if you live in an area where you have animals, right? Animals that are the same breed or same type of animal will destruct each other. If you put a group of people from any culture, any region, any area, if they're living amongst each other, then you're going to have more of a fatality rate amongst each other. So that's a given. But the other thing, too, is just because something is doesn't mean I'm okay with it.
Exactly.
And that's the point that I want to make to people. So whenever somebody's screaming Black Lives Matter, I won't knock that. You have the right to say what you want to say. If somebody wants to counter and say, well, what about the issues in our own black community? Sure, that's a different conversation for a different time. But it still is a conversation that can be had. So whether it is a problem to people or not, whether you believe black on black crime is real or not, you do have to understand that, especially living in a city like Milwaukee, there's disparity amongst people of color. Sure. And there is, like that gentleman said, he was robbed by people of his own kind. That is unfortunate. I was robbed at gunpoint before. I didn't get robbed by a white guy, but at the same time, I understand that no matter what a person's ethnic background is, there's going to be struggle, there's going to be difficulties. And you have to have a mentality to try to see beyond it and get past it. But we know when you're a person of color, your interaction with law enforcement are different. We know depending on what community you live in, your interactions with your own community will be different. And unfortunately, if we don't change the mindset and educate each other, then there will be continued self-destruction and not an appreciation for each other just because of the mind frame.
And one could think this is why this conversation is appropriate, because hip hop is one of those genres that unites everybody. Hip hop is everywhere. Hip hop is global. So like when you think about unity, I mean, the fact that Dima and I are homies, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we met way back when. The fact that, like, when I think about everybody in my crew, we're from all over the place. The fact that, like, I mean, I did a song with somebody in the UK.
It's fire.
Like, just because by happenstance, networking on social media, before you know it, I'm doing a song with a band in the UK because that's hip hop.
Yes.
Hip hop breaks down these barriers.
And remember, we don't get to the globalization. That's
you know
true.
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So hip hop has broken down barriers. So I mean, you know, the gentleman coming and discussing these things, it has a place in hip hop, and hip hop, I'll say, is doing one of the most amazing jobs when it comes to being human.
Yes.
Like when people say, "Well, what's your culture? What's your?" I'm like, okay, well, I'm of African origin and descent. Western African. I'm born here. But the only culture I know is hip hop culture.
Yes,
because how we came up and how we came about, we literally, like I said, being the first generation, I identify as hip hop culture. Then because of that, I can talk to somebody else from Guam, and we can be like, "Yo, did you hear what you call?" And vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
it's a universal language.
Yeah.
But it comes from our community.
Yes.
Now we got a young man sitting in front of us, man. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Patiently waiting. Appreciate it, sir.
My name is Damian Williams. My artist name is Just Dame.
Nice.
And speaking to you guys, I've been listening. You guys are on a roll. I love it. And
Thanks, man.
I have a question for you, speaking. Being the first generation, I heard that in that time period, hip hop was looked down upon. It was frowned upon. If you was listening to hip hop or had any association with it, you were almost like a criminal of sorts.
Yep.
And now we're in a time period of, if you're anybody can be a rapper, you're a star. You get fame. It pushes people in greater positions than what they ever did before. People who used to oppress us, children now look up to us because of how far hip hop has grown, just as a culture, like we said. So I want to ask you personally, when did you started to notice a shift of when it was so much hate on hip hop to now it's the greatest thing in America?
I think it happened in the late 90s when hip hop artists started to get smart and become executives with the people like Russell Simmons, because when hip hop came out, they said it was gonna die out like disco.
It was a fad.
They said, "Oh, this won't last for about 10 years. Hip hop will be gone." But then when you got people like Rick Rubin, Russell Simmons, and those guys, and not to forget what Jay Prince and them were doing in the South, when you have executives like that, they started learning the business of hip hop. There was no way hip hop was gonna fail after that, and that's why you got all of these amazing artists and artists like yourself who, like, okay, you know, all it takes is one song. All it takes is one song on the right playlist in 2020, and you're out of here. And I can be like, yo, I met that dude one day on 26.
Yes.
And now this kid is on TV. Like, yo, like, that's hip hop. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate the passion in that question, and you'll start to see as you continue to ascend. You'll start to see, because I know hearing you talk, you already know you can't just be a dope artist. You also have to be a good businessman.
Yes.
So you're already ahead of the curve, man. I appreciate the question.
Who and for you as well? Because I know y'all was inspired by hip hop, but who was it that you seen physically that you told to yourself, you know, I can do that as well? You know, that you looked at and was like, you know what, I could be almost in the same predicament he in, or even better, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, I would have to say, I said a little bit earlier, I think I said like Eazy-E, just because he was like,
gangster.
Yeah, you know, like just somebody like that who, he was a great strategist as well. He wasn't really an MC. He had a ghostwriter, but he saw the vision of music and branding. Eazy-E is one of the first people in hip hop that branded well. And then you have Russell Simmons, who also branded well with Run DMC and Adidas. But like, that's when I saw I could do that. And I think I go back to 13. Like, my sister this day can still recite like the first rap I ever wrote. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we joke about it, but like, yeah, man. When I saw MCs like when I saw rappers like Eazy-E, Rakim, MCs like Scarface, I'm like, yo, we can do this. And you know, you go back from, I think about my first talent show.
Yeah,
My first talent show
talk
at
about
age
it.
9. I wasn't even rapping. Like back then, you could just beatbox and get on. So my first talent show, like one of the homies is rapping and I'm beatboxing. So after that, man, that was the first time I hit the stage. After that, I'm like, I'm not looking back. Yeah, man. So you said, so
We got a special guest calling through shortly as well.
okay, all right. So one last question for you, because I truly believe in hip hop and I believe in each one teach one, spreading, your art around. So if you could direct anybody who's listening to one song of yours, like because when you talk about this is a dope MC, they're like, okay, what's their song? So if you were to direct people to one song of yours, what song is that?
The latest song that I have released out now is on Spotify, YouTube, is called Unexpected. That's all together. Just Dame, my rap name is just like juxtaposition, JUXT space DAME, and within that song that you hear, it's just me basically proving that I am the best lyrically wise. But in terms of listening and content, if you really listen to what I'm saying, I speak about black on black crime. I speak about us getting false water, false knowledge, just having a lot of things pressed on us in our environments. I thank you for asking me that, because even if we do stop our oppressors, even if we do wipe out all of our enemies that oppress us, we still have ourselves to deal with, and that's what I think that gentleman was really getting towards.
Oh, for
because
sure.
at the end of the day, conflict is within human nature. You know what I mean? It's inevitable. So the best thing that we could do is share the best way to handle our emotions and feelings and how we go about appropriately being considerate to one another. That's another thing I learned as well, being considerate. So Unexpected, I shot a music video for it a couple of days ago with my homie David. Shout out to David. And it's gonna be released in about 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, in Unexpected, man, I just speak about Milwaukee. I speak about me myself having thoughts of, okay, my cousin used to bully me. Now he's locked up in jail, and I don't feel like I'm obligated to send him any money, because what did he do to me? You know what I mean? It's like pent up aggression, and then I get to the point where, like, you know what? I was young. I'm older now. I can let that go. You know what I mean? Moving forward.
And what I'll say, like, and we appreciate you, Just Dame, and thank you for what you're contributing to the hip hop culture. And speaking of which, I'm getting word that we have a hip hop legend on the line right now.
Thanks, Dave, for stopping through.
Thank you, Just Dame. Check him out, y'all.
Yeah, man. So we're gonna
God
shift.
bless, bro.
We're gonna shift the conversation right now to start speaking about the commercial aspect, the pop culture aspect of hip hop, and we can't talk about that without speaking about one of the most important and arguably the most pivotal magazine to hip hop culture, the Source magazine. And I reached out to a good dude by the name of Dave Mays, who actually is the founder of the Source magazine, the founder of Hip Hop Weekly, and also the founder of the Hip Hop Museum. So none other than the legend, man, Dave Mays. Dave, you here?
I'm here. What's going on, Promise?
Dave, what's going on, baby? How you feel?
Feeling good, man.
Man,
good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thank you for calling in, man. Thank you for being a part of this conversation, man. We celebrating 47 years of hip hop, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. We still got a long ways to go.
Absolutely. Now, man, you started in your dorm room, man. You started the Source magazine in your dorm room in Harvard, correct?
That's true. 1988.
In 88, man. Now, what was your inspiration to even try to put, before it became a magazine? I know it was a single sheet, kind of like newsletter, right?
Wow.
Yeah, the first one was just a one-page newsletter, and the way it happened was when I got to college, I joined a radio station there at Harvard, which was playing 95% classical music, but I had a guy that I met who was into hip hop like me, and we convinced them to give us a 1 hour time slot, like a graveyard shift on Friday night, late at night, to do a radio show. And so through the radio show, I built up a pretty good following in the Boston area, people all around the city that would tune in, because back in, you're talking the 1980s, Not only was there no magazines, I mean, obviously no social media, no cell phones,
Right.
but there was very little, hip hop on the radio anywhere. Pretty much a lot of people had to go to college radio stations to hear rap music.
Or just underground.
So, yeah, or pirate stations, back then a little. So yeah, I built up a pretty nice following, for the show. It's called Street Beat around the Boston area, and people would always call in to the show and want to know information. When is the new Public Enemy album coming out, and who produced that new, Big Daddy Kane single, and
Yeah.
A lot of questions all the time because again, there was no information available. No magazines, no newspapers were covering hip hop at the time. And I had built up a mailing list of my listeners, had people call in and give me their names and addresses, and came up with the idea to create a free newsletter to give out news and information to the hip hop world.
Wow.
And that was the first one, and then it went from 1 page to 6 pages and 16 pages, and I started to put them out in mom and pop record stores and sell them for $1.25.
Sheesh.
Once I got it up, a little bit, and literally just started calling up mom and pop record stores all over the country, in every city from Milwaukee to Chicago to DC to Miami, and just finding any mom and pop stores basically in the hood that were selling hip hop, and say, hey, I got a new magazine, The Source. I'll send you a box on consignment. And
Nice.
it started working, man. People were loving it because there was no information. But by you still had millions of people loving hip hop by the mid '80s.
Right.
You had Run DMC that was huge, and you had Curtis Blow and Salt and Pepper, and Grandmaster Flash and the Fat Boys. So the music was popular, so there was a huge audience, but there was just no information anywhere.
No
available
outlets.
for people.
Nice.
Yeah.
So from there,
Yeah.
now that's an amazing story, Dave. So from there, how were you able to turn it into something that was going to be a publication that was mass, produced
Yeah.
on a mass level, and it started getting it national? What was the next step after that?
Well, I mean, literally, it was just step by step. It was a gradual process. I didn't know anything about this. I was learning as I went along. I was always kind of an entrepreneur from
Okay.
a young age, and so I just was figuring out as I went along. But the record store distribution grew. I mean, I ended up with hundreds and hundreds of stores around the country that were selling, anywhere from 50 to 250 copies a month.
Wow.
Started building up a lot of advertising from the record companies. That was pretty much the only advertising I could get in the first 5 years was record companies. But I built up a lot of great relationships. The record companies, supported it because they needed a way to promote all these, rap records they were putting out in their artists. And again, there wasn't too many places to get any kind of publicity.
Yeah.
So the record companies loved the magazine. I actually, when I was getting ready to graduate college, I had to figure out, how to move down to New York City and set up an office and start paying. That's when I needed a little bit of money. And I was actually able to convince maybe 3 or 4 record companies to give me a year worth of advertising up front.
Wow.
So that I could get some capital, and I raised $80,000 that way in the spring of my senior year, and that was the capital I used to move down to New York, rent out a little office, and start paying a few of us, little salaries to cover our expenses.
Nice.
What did you study while you were at Harvard?
Actually, my major is in government. My degree is in government.
Really?
They don't really have. Yeah, they don't really have it's a liberal arts college. They don't really have business or practical type of majors there. So yeah, my major was government.
Wow, Dave, this is Speakeasy. I have a question for you. So, like, when you talk about, I mean, you hear all these great artists talking about the source, and the source being like, I don't know, here in Milwaukee, like, we called the source the Bible of hip hop. Like, literally, it meant everything to us. I remember, like, you get allowance, like, you get that, like, by the time I start copping the source, it was $5. So, like, how do you feel about your place in hip hop? And, like, there will never be anything like the source. So what is, being that that's your creation, you created in the dorm room, like, first question, how does that make you feel? And then what do you tell creators today that are also trying to do something from scratch?
Well, I mean, I feel great. I'm really proud of, you know, everything that the source accomplished and everything it contributed, you know, to the culture and empowering a lot of people and businesses. I mean, you know, the source not only discovered, you know, many artists from, you know, Biggie and Common and Eminem and Mobb Deep,
Right.
Conan Noriega, David Banner,
Unsigned Hype,
Jay Electronica, Unsigned Hype.
Oh my gosh!
All these artists literally were discovered and put on. That's how they got their record deals, because they were in the Unsigned Hype column. But
that was everything.
There's a lot of other people that came through. I mean, we discovered Tyson Beckford, the first black male supermodel.
I didn't
put
know
him
that.
in a magazine. He was just playing basketball on a playground in New York. We asked him, did he want to be in a photo shoot? And
so y'all found him before he was doing Tommy and all those ads back in the day?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's how he got into it, through the stores.
I never knew that.
That's crazy. Nobody,
1991. Yeah, 1991. I still got the first few issues with Tyson modeling in the fashion source. And Aaron Magruder from the Boondocks.
Yeah.
The Boondocks.
Used to have the clips used to be in the magazine,
Woo.
Yeah, before he got, you know, on TV and all that other stuff. And there's just a lot of writers, people that, you know, there's people like Dream Hampton, who's a producer you guys probably heard, produced the Surviving R. Kelly and a bunch of other stuff. So she started in 1991. She was assistant editor at the Source right out of college. That was her first job. You know, this woman named Karen Mayo, who went on to start Honey Magazine. Yeah, created, was the editor-in-chief of Ebony Magazine for a while.
Dream,
many people.
Did Dream do something with Vibe as well?
After she left the Source, she started doing writing for Vibe as well. Right. The author, who's very, very well known today, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Familiar with him?
Yeah.
He started writing record reviews at the Source when he was in college. That was his first writing.
Wow. Did not know that was
a lot of people like that. So yeah, man, it's you know, I think what made the Source so important and why it was so revered, like you say, as the Bible, was because of my commitment to really keeping magazine authentic and, you know, understanding that, you know, with hip hop, it comes from the streets, you know, it comes from these inner city communities and, you know, the conditions that you know, people in those communities have had to deal with. And, you know, that there has to be a respect of that. You know, as big as hip hop was getting, you know, it's about commercializing and making money, but also being able to kind of keep your foot, you know, in the community at the same time, and try to create that bridge between the corporate world and the community, and just that authenticity. You know, and that's really what made the Source so important. A lot of those people, like I mentioned, that we discovered, I mean, you know, these are people that they didn't have no, you know, Harvard degrees or different qualifications. We just found a lot of young, talented people. And in the 90s at the Source, there was nobody under 25 years old really working at the whole company. And we might have had, you know, 50 employees.
Sheesh.
You know, so we just, you know, we believed in young people and people that had talent, even if they didn't have the resume necessarily.
That's what's up.
As far as the I guess the other part of your question, I mean, you know, as far as people that want to do things. I mean, first, anything's possible, especially in today's world, this digital world. I mean, everything's wide open. Every major business industry is either gone through or going through like totally drastic changes and kind of wiping out all the strategic advantages that they had to keep other people from getting into these businesses for so many years.
Yeah.
So it's, the digital thing is kind of leveling the playing field in a lot of ways, and, creating a tremendous amount of opportunity. I always tell people, you just, if you really have a vision and you really believe in it, and it's something that, you're really committed to and passionate about, to follow it. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to see your vision, as an entrepreneur, that's the case a lot of times. I mean, a lot of people, nobody really believed in what I was doing. I'm at Harvard and I'm trying to do a rap magazine. Like, people are like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Right.
Like, you're supposed to be doing whatever, coming out of Harvard. And I'm like, no, I'm sticking here and, sticking with this hip hop thing because I really loved it and believed in it.
Wow, that's what's up. Appreciate that.
Dave, let me ask you one of the most popular and highly argued features of the Source was, of course, the mics. Where everybody wanted to know, how do you get a 5 mic? You know what I mean? So I want to ask you, whose idea was it originally to come up with the mic rating system? And what's maybe like one of the a story you can tell us about somebody who maybe gave you some flack for one of their ratings?
That's a great question.
Oh man. Well, we used to have basically what we call the Mind Squad, which was our group of editors that worked on the magazine. Everybody had different jobs, but as a collective, we would get together, in the office, in the conference room, and just, come up with ideas and bounce things off each other. And, that was also, like I said, having all these really young, talented people that loved hip hop, kind of together in one room, created a lot of great things. And so the ratings came out of that. When it first started, it was a 1 to 5 rating system, with the 5 being a hip hop classic, but it wasn't mics. Maybe a year into it, we came up with the idea to change it to 1 to 5 mics.
Okay.
And so that was still pretty early in the early 90s.
Okay.
But like you said, I mean, that was like the standard, for everyone in hip hop in the 90s. Artists literally would, go in the studio and like try to make a 5 mic album. Like that was their goal. Artists would call.
It's been referenced on records. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, all I hear when I'm hearing you talk, I hear Big Boy in the back of my head. He said, "I gotta hit the Source. I need my other half a mic because that Southern Playlisted Cadillac music was a classic."
Yep.
I'm like,
yep.
Yeah. Well, we didn't always get it exactly right. I mean, 4.5 was pretty good. It was close, but they did come back and get 5 on.
I remember y'all did a couple revision issues too. Like I remember, there was a couple issues of the Source where you guys would re-review albums.
Went back and said which ones we messed up on. Yeah, like the Chronic. I mean, the Chronic got 4.5 mics.
Sheesh.
Chronic, in my opinion, is probably the best hip hop album of all time.
Yeah, it's a perfect album.
But then we got a lot of a lot of things right at the same time as well.
Right.
But there was some controversies. I mean, people would get mad, and there was some issues.
Somebody called up to the office.
Early 90s. Yeah, I mean, I always kind of held it down. We didn't have a reputation like you could just roll up on a Source and
that's what's
just,
up.
Just ill out on us.
Right.
I always had people holding it down for me, by and large. But in the early 90s, it got rough because a lot of the editors, I don't know, the magazine was being a little more critical of people. And there was one point in the early '90s where Public Enemy made a video where they were trashing the offices of the Sauce magazine.
I forgot about
Ice
that.
Cube,
Yeah.
Ice Cube dissed Source on Hand of the Dead Body with Scarface.
With Scarface, yeah.
Cypress Hill. I had a little confrontation with Cypress Hill down in Miami because they were mad. It wasn't necessarily. It might have been a review, or it might have just been an article. Something that was written that they didn't like. And these are all groups that loved us in the beginning. Like when Ice Cube, I remember him bringing America's Most Wanted up to the Source office to let us hear it.
Wow.
That's how it used to go back in those days. The artists used to just come by. Here's the album. I want you guys to hear it.
Yeah.
But I think that also validated you guys too. Like the fact that people were so passionate, whether it was love or it was hate, like y'all set the standard to where people measured themselves almost by what you put in that magazine, or by what was printed, or what the public would say after the reviews.
Yeah, especially like MCs, right? So like, in addition to the 5 mics, if you got a hip hop quotable,
don't forget about the hip hop quotable.
A hip hop. I mean, some MCs are still like. It's funny, like hearing younger MCs kind of refer to that and not even know where that came from.
Right.
Like, yeah, man.
Yo, I'm going to jump in real quick. My name's Justin. I wanted to ask you, because you're talking about the 5 mic thing, I would relate it most to, in this day and age, our generation, we get a lot of our music reviews and stuff off of YouTube, and this dude named Anthony Fantano with The Needle Drop. That's similar with, he has the 1 through 10 score, and a lot of people are competing to get that perfect 10. Okay. And there's some people who get salty because they get a 7 or an 8, which is still a positive review. But one thing I wanted to ask about is, with the Source, is I say the biggest thing that I can think of is the '95 Source Awards.
Whew.
With the whole East Coast West Coast beef and Outkast coming out. All I gotta say is South's got something to say.
Yeah.
That's I was born in '94, so it's not like I was old enough to remember or see that or whatever. But till this day, I'm still hearing about it.
But you got knowledge about it.
Till this day, people are still talking about it. I still see videos on Complex or whatever talking about the Source Awards and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask about how that kind of came about, how the awards started popping up.
Sure. I mean, the Source Awards is very, very legendary and very important to hip hop. I mean, going back a little before that, kind of like I was saying in the beginning, when the Source was coming up, the late '80s, early '90s, the rest of the world, if you were over the age of 25, you didn't listen to rap music mostly. You just thought it was garbage.
Or a fad.
People didn't take it seriously.
Yep.
A fad. It didn't take any skill to rap. That's just somebody, just saying some words, whatever.
They're just talking on music.
Right. No, so as a whole, hip hop wasn't taken seriously by the rest of the world. So those of us who were coming up, part of the first, wave of hip hop generation, like, it was like a us against them kind of thing. And that's what the Source was. The Source was the champion for the culture. We're the ones that stood up to the people in the mainstream that didn't know what they were talking about, called them out, stuff like that. So, when the Grammys created a rap category in the late 1980s, the only artists that would get nominated were like, the really pop ones, the Tone Loc or Young MC or
Jazzy Jeff,
those
Fresh
guys
Prince.
made some good music, but this is when you had Boogie Down Productions and Public Enemy and EPMD and all these incredible artists in NWA, and these guys would never get recognized by the Grammys or anywhere else. So in 1991, I came up with the idea to do the Source Awards as a way to celebrate the culture and the artists and the producers and everybody. And the first Source Awards was actually just one day on Yo MTV Raps back in like February of '92, where we actually just gave out awards on the set of Yo MTV Raps with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover, maybe 4 or 5 people. And then, by 1994, I built up to where it was actually the first big show at Madison Square Garden in the Paramount Theater there. That one was the one that Tupac performed, and there was some controversy because he ran out
on a Tribe Called Quest, right?
Well, Tribe Called Quest was accepting their award.
Right.
that was our first award show of that scale.
He's like, I'm gonna let you
And,
talk,
we
but
were still learning, and there was a lot of technical, problems with that. But then, then you get to '95. That was the first one where it was televised, and it was an incredible gathering. I mean, I have to say, Suge Knight and Death Row were hugely important in making that show happen. If you guys, when you watch that show, you see the opening set with the jail cells and the whole Death Row,
the inmates,
entourage perform. Yeah. I mean, they spent a lot of money, to pay for all that, which made the show look amazing. To fly all their artists out from LA. I mean, they probably flew 50, 60 people out. Jeez. And because they wanted to support the Source Awards and for hip hop to have its own award show. There were other artists, obviously everyone else that performed and was there, but they really went above and beyond. I mean, there's a lot of stories that have been told, and a lot of, like you said, continue to be talked about. It was a very very influential, instrumental night. The people in the crowd, it's 5,000 people in there. The majority were still from New York, because we sold tickets like in the back sections, and then in the front was only for the artists or the labels that could get tickets. But the majority of that 5,000 are still people from the New York City area, so they weren't fully as much up on or didn't love the music outside of New York. That was always an issue in those days as well. New York just kind of felt they were kind of better than everybody and looked down on the music from the other parts of the country.
Right.
So that's why you hear the boos when Outkast wins, for new group of the year and stuff like that. But despite the Suge and the Puff situation, I mean, there wasn't any violence there that night. There was no fight. No actual violence that took place. And a lot of times, people try to connect that to the start of the violence between Bad Boy and Death Row and East West, but that really happened, like a month or so later when Suge's guy from rest in peace, man, Jake got killed down in
Atlanta, right?
Atlanta.
Yeah.
That happened about a month and a half later, and and then you also have to look at the whole background of Tupac. I mean, the Tupac was at the root of that, and his issues with Biggie and Bad Boy started the year before, in '94, when he got shot outside the studio, our studio. So that's really the root of it. At the time when the '95 awards took place, Tupac was still in jail, and nobody knew that he was going to be getting out or that he was going to be coming to death row. So I had no idea. Nobody there knew that. So there wasn't like there was any Tupac tension there that night. So going into it, I wasn't really worried about Bad Boy and Death Row because there was no issues between them.
Right.
So, when Suge said what he said, it was a surprise, and I have my beliefs as to why it all happened, which I'll be talking about one of these days.
Word up. But, That's what's up.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, let me ask you this before we let you go. You speaking about the Source Awards, you also helped bring something legendary and for the first time here to Milwaukee last year, man, for Hip Hop Weekend PAE. You brought us a very well-produced award show to Milwaukee last year to honor some of our Milwaukee greats, and also you brought some legends like Bun B, Scarface, Mystical to town. So just speak a little bit about your relationship now with the city of Milwaukee and your plans that you also have for the city.
Yeah. I mean, I have love for Milwaukee now. I feel like I'm a honorary, kind of citizen there after last year.
Big facts.
Nice.
What I want to continue to do there. I mean, I learned a lot going into last year about the city that I didn't know, and that's a lot of the reason I got involved. First of all, being the first city to ever have a hip hop week. I mean, that's something that Milwaukee, should be proud of and recognized for. No other city in America has ever done that. And shout out to my man Alderman Khalif Rainey,
yes, sir,
who came up with the idea and made it happen. And then last year, for the second year, I got involved, and we helped to really take it, to a bigger level with some things. And we're going to continue it. Now this year, of course, with everything going on, we had called it off, but I actually can share some exclusive information with you guys today, which is that we are actually doing a virtual event for Hip Hop Week on September 22nd.
Nice.
Coming up in just a few weeks. It's a one-day virtual summit. It's called the Hip Hop Political Education Summit. And, what we decided to focus on for this one-day event was kind of a call to action to the hip-hop community to get more involved in what's going on socially and politically in the world right now. It felt like to me over the last couple of months, with all the things that's gone on following the death of George Floyd, that hip hop really hasn't had a voice or a place. And Black Lives Matter is an incredible movement in many ways, but before there was Black Lives Matter, there was hip hop. And, hip hop, basically, we were Black Lives Matter 25, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was hip hop that was talking about all of the exact same problems and issues and speaking out and trying to get people to pay attention and do something about all these things many, many years ago. And it's only now that it's gotten actually the attention of the mainstream. So it just feels to me like hip-hop needs to have a place in what's going on, because hopefully, this is a time in all of our lives that may be, one of the most important times in our entire lives, where there may be some real opportunities to change some of these conditions that have gone on and on and on, particularly in the Black communities and in many inner city communities across the country that have been, victimized by, racial prejudice and systemic racism and white supremacy and all the things that has caused. So, I just, feel like it's important. So we got a bunch of great folks that are going to be involved on the 22nd. People like Chuck D and Bun B and Jay Prince.
Sheesh.
I got some younger folks. Damon Dash is going to be part of it as well. YBN Corday, well actually Corday, not YBN anymore, and a few other folks. We'll be announcing it probably next week sometime. You guys hopefully will see it out there on social media. But you'll be able to log on, register if you want to participate in the summit, and also it'll be streaming. It'll be streaming on Revolt TV.
That's what's up.
That's amazing. Dave, y'all make some noise for Dave Mays, founder of the Source Magazine, the Hip Hop Pop-Up Museum. Dave, I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you for calling in. Me and you, we gonna stay connected. We gonna link. And thank you for taking some time, my man, to hop in on this conversation, man, and speak about how important your magazine was to be in the face of hip hop and just your place in the legacy of hip hop, man. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, much love to you guys and to the city of Milwaukee. Love as well, and I hope I'll see all y'all on the September 22nd for Hip Hop Week, MKE 2020.
Yes, sir.
Word up. Appreciate it.
Well, Speak, we could do this. We're gonna have to do a part 2, Speak.
Yes.
Because you know what I'm saying. We got
like halfway down the list, bro.
Right. We're gonna have to do a part 2 because we got some other dope things that are gonna take place this afternoon that we gotta make way for. But before we wrap up, we gotta do 2 things.
Okay.
We talking about hip hop. Speak. You gotta give me your top 5 of all time, and you gotta give me your top 5 current.
Top 5 of all time. Okay.
Man.
All right. Easily. Rakim.
Okay, 1. The order don't matter.
Yeah, Rakim, Royce the 5'9",
2,
Jay-Z,
3,
Busta Rhymes,
4. Okay.
Scarface.
Ooh, okay. This is top 5. Okay.
Yeah.
All time.
All right.
Now give me hold on. This is his list. Y'all can't be yelling at his list. Now give me your top 5 current. That was your all time. Now give me your top 5 current.
Top 5 current?
Yeah,
Jeez,
current.
I mean, I don't. So I gotta go Kendrick. I gotta go Cole.
Okay.
I gotta go. Let's see. Who else am I listening to? Oh, Conway.
Conway
from Griselda.
Okay.
Let's see.
I like West Side. Boom, 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 boom.
Let's see. Conway. So you got 3.
That's 3.
I got 2 more.
Yeah, I need 2 more.
So rappers today that I listen to. This one kid, Coda the Friend.
Okay.
I don't know where. I think I heard one of my kids listen to this dude. He just smooth and dope.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have to give it to this young up and coming MC. She's not up and coming, but she's new to me. Lady London. She's bananas.
So you gonna put them in your current
Right now,
5?
I think now Lady London can rap is with any MC in the game right now.
Okay.
She's that good.
Okay.
All right, so your top 5 all time. Go.
Top 5 all time. Nasir Jones.
Yeah.
Gotta put Nas in there.
Okay.
Gotta do Tupac Shakur.
Okay.
Gotta do Pac. Gotta do Sean Carter. Gotta do Jay.
Yeah.
Man, I grew up on that West Coast, man. I gotta do Calvin Brodus. Snoop Dogg. Snoop don't get the credit. I gotta put Snoop in there, man, for his longevity alone.
See, and I think so. That's why that's what we'll dive into the next time, because MC and artist are 2 different things.
They are, but I'm putting Snoop in there.
All right.
I could slide Snoop out and put Cube in.
Okay.
But I can't front on the dog.
I feel you.
I'm gonna put Snoop in there.
Respect.
And rounding out my top 5, I'm gonna have to do Brad Jordan.
Yeah,
Scarface. Face Mob.
Yeah.
Now that's my 5 all time.
Now, right now.
My top 5 right now?
Yeah.
That's easy. Right now, Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
Big Crit.
Word. Yeah, I like Crit.
Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah, Young Gibbs. Nice.
Cole World been doing his thing. J. Cole. And my 5th pick, this dude get a lot of hate. And I don't know why, because this dude is nice, man.
Okay.
Wale in my top 5, bro.
What?
For Lauren is top 5 right now. For Lauren don't get the love.
I think he's one of the most misunderstood MCs.
Yes.
Because he's so versatile. He don't get credit for being versatile.
Lauren can do the poetry. He can talk to the girls. He got the witty bars. So I'm gonna put for Lauren in my top 5.
And honorable mention for top 5 of all time is Andre 3000, but I can't put him in my top 5 until he gives me a full hip hop
Stacks don't have enough solo albums.
That's what I'm saying.
I agree.
I haven't heard Andre 3000 hip hop.
Big Boy is highly underrated. And you know what we gotta do next time too?
Yeah.
By MJG.
Next what we think we gotta do? I want to know your top. Next time we gotta do your top 5 groups.
Okay.
Because we don't ever talk about groups enough.
Yeah.
I want to know top 5 groups, and I want to know your top 5 female MCs.
Woo! Oh, that's easy. Yeah, we can do that. Word up.
We appreciate y'all tuning in, man, to this impromptu podcast about the history of hip hop. Appreciate y'all vibing out with us. Everybody watching online, everybody in person. My name is Promise. This is Speak Easy. Thank y'all for coming out. We got a dope show, and make sure y'all support the new state, man.